the technicals on gold always seem to feed it being bullish. But
Yeah.
probability wise, uncertainty is high. Do you think
Yeah.
there's more legs to this move? At least in my circle, people talk about Bitcoin and talk about never selling it. It's not even a part of their stock portfolio because it's their thing they're going to give to their kid's kid because they're that much of a believer in it.
Building a cash position, that's kind of a way to short, because you're sitting there and you're saying, well, how do I make money? Well, I definitely don't make money holding on to dollars, right? Because if you're holding on to dollars, you're just losing money over time, or losing true purchasing power. But if you get a big drop, then you made money because you're basically saying, oh, well, now I can deploy that cash and get more out of my cash for the same.
Because I got crypto bros, my brother who's on the meme coin, but my brother also works for a private equity firm now. So my brother's like kind of doing both. Then you got the finance guys that are like, dude, I studied all these tests and did all this shit and you're just making all this money on fart coin and Santa coin. So like the collision of like finance bros was crazy at my house on Saturday.
Watch for changes in the wind, if you will, because if you do get these big metal market runs, they can be exceptional trading periods as well.
Absolutely.
But one thing to ask is, do you want to go into 2025 more or less diversified?
What's up, traders? Welcome back to the Day Trading Show. Today, I'm sitting down with Trader Nick. I don't know if this is our third episode together, maybe fourth episode together. He's a great guy. We talk about risk on assets. We talk about his portfolio, how he's balanced going into 2025. He mentions a couple of sectors he thinks that could perform really well. We talk about gold. We talk about the upcoming administration. It's a great episode. You guys are going to love it. So make sure you connect with Nick. All his links are down in the description. Our sponsors' links are in the description. We couldn't do this without them, so thank you to them as well. And now enjoy my conversation with the man himself, Mr. Trader Nick. This episode wouldn't be possible without Top One Trader. They have a brand new instant funding model that I think everyone needs to try. There's 5 different accounts you can choose from. You can hold trades over the weekend, and there's a 90-10 profit split. So use my link in the description. Use the code ASFX to save on your next instant funded challenge. And as always, thank you to Top One for being a sponsor of the podcast. Now let's get into the episode. All right, traders, welcome back to the show. We've got a regular back. Nick is in the house. Nick, is it snowing in Atlanta yet?
Not snowing, possibly this Friday. I would love to see some snow, though. It's not going to snow where you're, though. You're down in Florida, right?
But for a second, bro, they thought we were going to get snow in Tampa. Like when it was like a foot for you, they were like, oh, you might get 2 inches of snow in Tampa. That would be crazy,
Wow.
right?
Yeah, that would be crazy.
But it's good to have you back on the show, buddy. It's good to see you. I know we just were talking. We did the Trader Fest recently. My audience loves you. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Yes, let's shall. Whatever you want to talk about. I'm an open book. Good to be back. And again, this is probably like our fifth, sixth, seventh podcast.
A couple. Either for your channel, my channel. We had the meetup. We shook hands in Atlanta. What was that? 2 years ago or so? About now.
Yeah,
Time fucking flies, bro.
It sure
Time
does.
flies. Let's start with gold, and then we'll get into Bitcoin. Like I said, then we'll get into some bond stuff. What's your take on the gold trade in relation to Trump? Because this is probably the most contentious discussion point that I've seen on Twitter is how will Trump move commodities and gold specifically? So I'd like your take on that.
Yeah, gold is actually kind of complicated. First, we could just talk briefly about like 2024. The setup for gold in 2024 was so good because you had a couple reasons, but maybe the easiest one and I'm going to try and stay kind of high level macro so we don't,
Perfect.
for the viewers who are not super into bond yields and all that stuff, hopefully this is still relatable. But there are some simple concepts that really make sense for why gold was so good last year, right? We think about, for example, we had the uncertainty of who's going to win the election. Anytime you get uncertainty in the markets, period, people rush to gold. Like if there's like, when the whole Russia-Ukraine situation broke out, things like that trigger a rush to safe havens. And I know we're going to talk about Bitcoin. And before we get to that, Bitcoin and gold offer two very interesting, some ways similar, some ways very different, ways. If you're risk off, you want to go more towards gold. If you're risk on, you want to go more towards Bitcoin due to its high correlation to tech stocks, NASDAQ, etc. But if you are somebody who is worried about global inflation getting out of control, or you're worried about geopolitical events that could be on the brink of, a disaster or something, that's where gold fits into a portfolio really well. I mean, a lot of people just buy and hold a portion of gold. And I remember, Austin, years ago, you might have heard this too. Ray Dalio is like a big proponent of keeping a percentage of your portfolio just sitting in gold. It's like super boring until it's not, right? It's like a
Right.
really boring, doesn't move that much asset in terms of a percentage basis. Most of the time, you're better off in stocks. But then when you need it, gold plays that very unique, uncorrelated to the stock market potential. So you asked about 2025 and Trump and all this world that we're living in. What's gold look like? Well, we had a phenomenal run last year off of the idea that inflation in the world was kind of decreasing, allowing for central banks to reduce borrowing costs, which basically long story short, means a bunch of money is going to flood into the system, and that makes gold more attractive on a
Of course.
relative basis. Just makes good, common sense on that front. So for 2025, there's some headwinds and there's some tailwinds to gold. So right now, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not super, convinced, oh, we need to be, super heavy buying gold right now. But I'm also certainly not a proponent of shorting gold or being against something that long term typically goes up. The thing about gold for 2025 is that if you're somebody who is thinking about geopolitical risks, you may want to have some exposure. Like on the long side, that's a bullish catalyst, is the uncertainty of China, Taiwan, all these big macro stories. But then on the other side, where's the headwind for gold? Well, the dollar's been really strong, and part of that is because, economies are kind of holding up better than people thought they would. The US economy, Jerome Powell recently titled it extraordinary, which is kind of insane to me that he would use that word from his role. I mean, he's got to be careful with those kinds of extraordinary words, but it's extraordinary right now. That's the popular consensus. So if that is the case, that keeps the dollar strong, keeps weight on the price of gold. That being said, if anything unwinds, I'm a big proponent, Austin, of always having some exposure to the metals, because think about it this way, and this is maybe one of the most important parts to why I like it in the portfolio. Gold does not move in tandem with the stock market. So if you're an investor or you're a trader that holds positions long term, if you're all in on the NASDAQ and the NASDAQ crashes by 30%, if you're all in on that, that's going to be rough. But let's say you're 50% NASDAQ, 50% gold, they don't necessarily move together. And that's the cool thing about, metals.
Great answer. So two follow-ups to that. One, let me take a tangent for a second. I'm looking at a gold chart right now. With gold doing well in uncertain times, gold kind of found that bottom when Trump got elected and stayed 2016, 2017, 2018 around 1200, 1400. But it became that new all-time high near 2000, above 2000, especially we retested it during COVID. So it kind of backs your point of like, as things I mean, during COVID, that's probably one of the most uncertain periods of time in our lifetime, right? So that makes sense that that's when it hits that high. Now, the technicals on gold always seem to feed it being bullish. And I totally agree with you that it's just a question of what are the windows of time before we make that new all-time high. So my tangent question here is, do you think there are new highs on a probabilistic scale? Nothing is guaranteed. We know that. But
Yeah.
probability wise, is this leg done? Or because China may take Taiwan, because Russia and Ukraine are still in conflict, because the Middle East is still a shit show? I mean, even here, bro, look at the terrorist attacks that happened to start. Uncertainty is high. Do you think
Yeah.
there's more legs to this move?
Yeah, that's actually a good point, what you discussed there about like the previous Trump administration. One of the things that not to get political, but the people who support him love that there was not a lot of like, geopolitical conflict on a
Right.
relative basis to
Yeah.
human history in his last administration. That's again, as you mentioned, one of the big catalysts for gold is uncertainties, violence, wars, things like that. So and I do also want to clarify too, to be fair to the political commentary at all, following Biden's election and Trump's previous election and this one, gold all during those three periods of time, the following weeks there was sell off. It's simply de-risking, right? People are, oh my gosh, there's who knows if there's going to be a peaceful pass of power and presidential election, this and that. Once that passes, there's a natural kind of like, oh yeah, okay,
The
we can
uncertainty has
relax.
eased a little bit. Yeah, we know who
Yes.
won the election. Cool.
Yeah. But then, as you mentioned, gold didn't have an exceptional period of time during Trump's previous presidency. That being said, we're living in a very different post-pandemic world. And I'm kind of, again, a fan of always keeping some exposure, but I actually do think that there's more upside for gold on a longer term basis. It's not something I ever short. I very, very rarely will take a bearish position on gold, even on a
It's
low
hard.
time frame. It's
It's
a
just
hard
hard.
thing to short. Same thing with the NASDAQ, same with the S&P.
It may go sideways, but
Yeah.
down is not the direction that either of those things favors for sure.
Well, and exactly. And typically, if they do go down, it's a short window. It's a brief,
Yeah.
hard sell off, and then
And
it
for
is.
the real people, that's a buying opportunity, like yourself. I remember
Yeah.
during the COVID dip, you crushed it. You bought that
Right,
dip
right,
and you
right.
fucking crushed it. So,
Yeah.
okay, so that's a good answer to that. Now, looking at other metals, does silver and copper have the same inflationary and geopolitical components to them that gold does?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question too, because then if you're really bullish on gold, maybe you pick silver instead because it outpaces, right? So that's one side to it as well. Gold is a bit of it's a safe haven store of wealth kind of idea. So is silver to a degree, but if we talk about silver, the correlation is very high. Like they move in
Yeah,
tandem for the most part, but just kind of like for the younger people, it's kind of like altcoins and Bitcoin. Altcoin moves a lot harder. They move a lot harder in whatever direction we're going with Bitcoin. Same thing kind of with silver and gold, but that's like the OG, back in the day, altcoin and main coin, I guess.
that's a good
But
comparison.
with silver, it's like, okay, so silver is an industrial commodity. It's used in solar panels, it's used in airplanes, it's used in semiconductors, it's used in everything. So if the global economy is doing well, that's also kind of one positive thing for silver, one nuance to gold. Gold doesn't have, it does have use cases like jewelry and things like that, but it's not quite the exact same metal. And then if you get into copper, that's straight up an industrial metal. People don't
Same thing with
usually.
like nickel, cobalt, these things that they
Exactly.
need for electric cars and stuff. So then
Yeah.
you're kind of looking at it from just a different play. The play is
Yeah.
different. Are they going to be building a lot of stuff with that metal versus are countries going to hold? Because like countries don't have strategic reserves of those metals for the most part. Am I correct? Real quick, before we go any further with today's podcast, I want to thank our second sponsor, Edgeful. Edgeful is the only tool you need to reach your trading goals. This is the one-stop shop if you're trading stocks, futures, or crypto. You can go into Edgeful and gather all the information you need to refine your edge. Whether it's the report on how often the gap fills or the report on how often we make a new high of day in Power Hour, all of those answers are given to you and updated daily in Edgeful. So use the link down below, check out Edgeful. This could be a tool that changes 2025 for you. So I'm being serious. This is definitely worth your time. And if you want to see us use it, come check out ASFX TV. But I got an Edgeful link in the description. Definitely go check that out. And of course, thank you to them for being a sponsor. Now let's get back to the video.
Right. And also the other thing too is that if we're talking about price appreciation of those things, you want to see a big move in copper, look at periods of high inflation. That's typically when copper and some of these industrial metals just skyrocket in price alongside everything else. Like when we saw, big price increases in years past, that high inflation environment typically is, kind of good to those kinds of just straight up
Usually.
like lumber prices, copper prices,
Oh,
things
yeah.
like
Remember
that.
lumber during COVID? That was crazy. And then it came
Yep.
all the
So
way back to.
supply constraints, things like that can cause it. But generally speaking, I like the idea. I like silver and I like gold. Though I kind of prefer gold just simply because of its just incredible track record compared to silver. Silver is actually is well off its all-time highs. All-time highs for silver are much, much higher than where we currently are today. Back in like 2011, I think it was its
Let's
previous
pull it
peak.
up.
Yeah, I mean it's a crazy
Well, you got if you go even
chart.
back further than that into the 80s, right? You've got the Hunt
Yep.
brothers that cornered the silver market. And that I think was what, yeah. So all time high
Yeah.
is 2011 here, $49. We're at $30 as of today.
Hmm.
So still a lot
Yep.
of room to the upside. And then if you go back, like I said, yeah, to the 80s, the high in the 80s, also $48
Yeah.
on January 1st of 1980. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Well, the
So
question too, Austin, maybe
yeah,
one thing to think about here is
yeah,
for listeners who are thinking about maybe a portfolio approach. If you're more of a day trader, this may not be as relevant to you. However, watch for changes in the wind, if you will, because if you do get these big metal market runs, they can be exceptional trading periods as well.
absolutely.
But for investors, portfolio people, one thing to ask is, do you want to go into 2025 more or less diversified. Because if you're going into here's my take on it is we've just had two phenomenal years in the stock market, right? The stock market has been up 20+% for the last 2 years. And I got people all over the Twitter universe telling me, Nick, why aren't you just buying and holding these things? They just go up every day. I had a 16% return in 2024, which to me was good, but
Yeah.
I'm not a simple buy and hold investor.
Right.
16% on relative low risk, I'm good with that. But the thing is, you get the comments immediately, well, you could have just bought and held the S&P
Of
and it would have
course.
been up 23% or whatever it was. But
Yeah.
the thing is, the question is, do you think that that is sustainable? And if so, then you don't want to be diversified. You want to be concentrated in the NASDAQ, you want to be concentrated in the S&P 500. But if you're not convinced that it can sustain that same thing. I mean, expectations for stock markets are very high now. A couple years ago, they were very low. People were like, "Oh, this thing's falling out of the sky. It's going nowhere. Tech stocks are dying." Meta was trading at like $80 a share,
I was
which
gonna
is
say
like,
$100 a share. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
it's
Now
like so
400.
low. So
Yep.
the point is, can stock markets go up over time too? And I actually, generally speaking, lean more on the bullish side of them. But I don't think we go the same rate of return as we've had. I think a lot of people are their short-term bias, their recency bias is very strong right now. People think tech stocks go up every day, and there are times where they do not go up every day. And in fact, they go down 2-3% per day for months on end, like we saw in 2022. And Austin, you and I have done the social media stuff alongside each other for since like near the beginning. We started around a similar time, and what I
Mhm.
find interesting is that you know if you know your history, markets do not go up forever. And we're also living in one of the greatest bull market stretches that US history has ever seen. So it's important for us to open up our mind and realize that our parents are not all, they may be old school, but they remember some times that we have not experienced, like 2008, 2000. I think it's important not to get ignorant to the idea that risk on markets do not go up forever. And Bitcoin, for example, which I know you wanted to talk about, has never seen a true bear market environment, like a recession environment.
No. Great point. The question there, though, is so let's go into that just before we go to Bitcoin for a second. Yes, we haven't had our great short or big short and our great recession or whatever they called the financial crisis. But will we? With the Fed printing money whenever we need it to, adding assets to its balance sheet, look at how many small banks have more debt on their sheets now than they did in 2008. Still hasn't popped. Does it like you get what I'm saying? Are we,
Yeah.
you don't want to say recession proof or too big to fail, but like, is that a fair question at this point? Because QE is not, there was no QE in 2001. There was no QE back in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s.
Yeah.
It's kind of a different landscape now. So what's your take on that?
That's a great, topic because again, I think that's part of the reason why we've been able to sustain the rally that we've had for so long.
Yeah.
There's a couple things, and this makes me sound like I'm a super bear on risk assets because I absolutely am not. I'm long all these things for the most part. I'm just pointing out that we have to be open-minded to history, and history is really important. So here's the thing. I think yes, we will have reset events again. I don't think that that's gone forever because here's the thing. How has the Fed been able to paper over major bad events? Well, they just stack on debt on top of debt. And that is not something that is forever sustainable. It's been very sustainable for a long time, but there's a little bit of me, the bear part of me comes out for a second, it's look, the economy is partially held up by money printing. Largely, a lot of the stimulus, a lot of the activity in the economy could be, pointed towards to government spending. And on top of that, major crash events may have been avoided through government spending. And yes, that works, but it works until it doesn't. If it broke, if the U.S. Debt it gets too heavy, it boils over, there's no more saving the day from the Fed idea. That could be seriously a
Well, because it becomes
thing
to
that,
you're at the edge of the cliff. It's like it's now going to break so bad because it
yeah,
hasn't broken for so long. That's
yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, in
Interesting.
2008, the Fed stepped in to try and save the day, like they did in 2020. In 2020, it was like on the dot, it turned around. The Fed stepped
Yep.
in. We got this from here. 2008, they stepped in too, but that was because the issue was we had a real recession. COVID was not, the economy was strong before COVID. We were working with, a lot of muscle, right? And
That's a good
then we
point.
had the drop. 2008, you had true problems that materialized over time, and then they all collapsed. So I think that yes, we will have reset events in our lifetime, but the optimist side is those are opportunities like no other.
Opportunities.
Those are
Oh
where
my
you
God, yeah.
you
Well,
get
look, Warren
ready for
Buffett's got
those.
more cash now than ever, right? He's sitting on
Yeah.
a shit ton of cash as markets are basically near all-time highs again. So
Yep.
he feels, and many people think he feels there's an opportunity coming. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he is Warren Buffett, but again, you could see this both being right. You could see the pullback happening. Warren stacks it. Warren gets, trillions of dollars and crushes it. Or he becomes the old man that thinks it has to be the way it was and it never happens. And he dies with all that cash sitting there.
Yeah.
And his predecessor has to do something with it. So, yeah, very interesting. So, before I forget, though, because I had one really good question, I had a guy on the show before that does portfolio investing and stuff, and that's his forte, worked at Goldman. He talked about exposure to like SQQQ. I don't hear
Mhm.
you talk about that much. What's your take on that?
So as like kind of a hedge
Yeah,
portion of the
like
portfolio.
okay, Ray Dalio says we need a good chunk of money in gold. Fine. And then you're going to be long in the equities heavily, more likely than not on tech stuff because we know tech is where the growth is. We're young. You want to be with growth. Fine.
Mhm.
But what about that 5% of the portfolio that should be in the SQQQ that people don't talk about all the time, right? Like you said, a lot of people that commit to investing, it's buy, hold, leave it alone. There is no short exposure. When the market drops 30%, they lose 30%. So do
Yeah.
you ever dabble with that short exposure and then maybe change the percentage of how much you have in it? Like, I just am curious if
Yeah.
you use it.
No, that's a wonderful question because if you think about it, right, there are actually many ways. Although I mentioned earlier in our conversation, like I don't really like to short equities or short indices, which is what SQQQ is. I
Right.
don't personally dive into that too far. However, there are other ways to build a defensive position in the markets from a portfolio approach. Even from a trading perspective, and I also just want to clarify too, when I talk about these, like those are kind of in the closet, skeletons in the closet, like problems that the US and the globe has in terms of the economy stuff. I am actively on the long side right now with like, I'm long semiconductors, I'm long NASDAQ, like I'm riding the move. So I'm not like bitter on the sidelines. I'm kind of like,
You're aware.
okay. Yeah, I'm aware of these things. And here's the thing. How do you play that? Well, as a trader, I'm trading those things long. I have stop losses. I have, measurements to get me out. That's one way to be prepared is I trade a momentum trading strategy off the daily chart. I'm an active trader through and through, but I'm just aware of the bigger picture as well. Now, when it comes to being defensive, so SQQQ, have a little bit of your portfolio ready for, building shorts. Like that's one way some people like to do it as like a straight up way to hedge. For me, I'm more conservative than that. For me, my equivalent would be to build cash. Or if I'm not that defensive, that to me, if you're sitting in cash, you're kind of short. Like in a way, if
Agreed.
you are building a cash position, that's kind of a way to short because you're sitting there and you're saying, well, how do I make money? Well, I definitely don't make money holding on to dollars, right? Because if you're holding on to dollars, you're just losing money over time or losing true purchasing power. But if you get a big drop, then you made money because you're basically saying, oh, well, now I can deploy that cash and get more out of my cash for the same. Yeah, you get the point. The other
Mhm.
way that I do actively is sector rotation, which is basically so within the S&P 500, you have all sorts of different sectors. So you have healthcare, which has gotten beaten down like crazy recently. I actually like healthcare for 2025. We'll see if that bites me in the butt or not, but I like that area of the market. It's been beaten down. It's a contrarian play.
Pfizer, Moderna, what are you buying?
Yeah, well, there's an ETF that I like, which is
Nice.
XLV. It's a
Yep.
it's a sector fund, so it holds a bunch of them.
100%.
And yep. So and then you might also, if you had a ton of tech exposure, one way to get defensive in your portfolio would be to rotate out of technology names, stocks, sectors, et cetera, and maybe move that into other things. So that's kind of one way that I
Like
also
what? Financials,
could go
industrial stuff?
financials, you could go utilities, which
Yeah.
are notoriously defensive, energy, which has a low correlation to the S&P. So,
Yep.
you have options here that you
See, I like
can
that take,
do.
Nick. I think
Yeah.
that's a good take because I don't think people are, not that they're not ready, but maybe they're not prepared to be okay, I have 5% in SQQQ. Market's starting to topple. I'm going to sell some of my long and add to SQ. Now that can go down a steep slope, buddy, because like we just said, a 10% sell off hurts to some people. It feels really bad, but how fast do we bounce back from those 10% pullbacks sometimes, right, Nick?
Yeah,
We pull
yeah.
back 7% into a 50 SMA, sit there for a week, and we're back at all-time highs by the end of the month. So it can happen really quick, and then you can screw yourself. So I really like your take on cash being defensive and then rotation. I think those are two really, really good tips. How
Oh,
does Bitcoin? Oh, I'm sorry, good.
no, no, you're going to ask about Bitcoin. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, how does now Bitcoin fit into the risk on part of the portfolio? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't see, at least in my circle, people talk about Bitcoin and talk about never selling it. It's not even a part of their stock portfolio because it's their thing they're going to give to their kid because they're that much of a believer in it. And
Yeah.
we have to talk about, you got to give me your take on MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor because that blows my mind too.
Oh,
His
yeah, yeah.
levered Bitcoin play, basically he wants to be a treasury. So yeah, give
Mhm.
me your thoughts, because Bitcoin, for everybody listening, if you weren't on the Trader Fest with Nick and I, Nick has crushed the IBT trade. That's correct, right? IBIT, the IBIT. It's
IBIT,
the
yep.
that's the BlackRock ETF, correct?
Yep.
Yep. We want to give a big thank you to TradeZella for being a sponsor of the podcast. That means you guys get to save when you sign up. Either use the code ASFX10 for 10% off your monthly membership or ASFX20 for 20% off your yearly membership. If you don't know how to use TradeZella, we've got you covered there too. So we're going to help you save when you sign up, and we're going to teach you how to use it. Go to my YouTube channel, the ASFX channel, and watch the Hot Seat playlist. That's going to show you how real traders like yourself are using TradeZella today. We cover all the features, all the tricks, all the tutorials are right there for you. So big thank you to TradeZella, and let's get back to the video.
Yeah, no,
So
so man, so Bitcoin, I always try and make this point carefully because there are people who are true Bitcoin believers, and then there's me.
maxis.
I'm a trader. I'm not like the Bitcoin till I die guy.
Yeah.
And maybe, I should be in 20 years from now, we'll look back and say, "Oh, wow, you should have just been the Bitcoin till you die guy." But nobody knows for certain what's going to happen in the future. And to me, I treat Bitcoin for what I believe it is. It's a risk asset. It's correlation. You study correlations. It is super correlated to the NASDAQ. For listeners, if you want to test this theory, at least looking back, go to your trading view, go to your favorite charting platform, pull up the correlation coefficient indicator, and plug in the NASDAQ versus the Bitcoin chart, and you'll see if you broaden it to a 200-day look back period, it's super high correlation.
Like
There's a
what,
whole
point 0.8, 0.9, almost a
like
one,
point
probably
0.8, point
great.
0.9. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very, very high. And so the thing is, you made a great point there, Austin, about just like people might not even know how risk on they are in their account. And risk on is wonderful when it's working, but it is like devastating when it's not. Like risk off, true risk off environments can be super, super bad for people who are, if you're long the NASDAQ and you're long Bitcoin and you're long a handful of tech stocks that you like, you are so directly kind of concentrated in risk on, and you may not even realize it. So understanding correlations, understanding how Bitcoin plays in, for me, I treat Bitcoin as basically like a super high risk tech stock, just like MicroStrategy, which you just mentioned, which is leveraging it too. I'm not, I don't play the stock MicroStrategy. I'm very much, I just play Bitcoin from a trading perspective. It's one of those things that plays a key role. It gives you some in a bull market. It generates some great alpha for a portfolio. You can outperform with Bitcoin if the market's going well. But
Right.
that concept of 10% pullbacks in the S&P and NASDAQ, I've been playing that like crazy. I know you have as well. You've been buying dips, buying. The only thing is that it's like musical chairs, right? It's working for now, and we're going to play it. But when it stops, you got to be ready to kind of pivot.
Absolutely. And the comparable way to look at Bitcoin, tell me if I'm wrong, is Bitcoin's going to have 70% pullbacks. At least in history, it's told us
Yeah.
that that's what will happen. What
Mhm.
I'm curious to see, we're at 101 today. I'm looking at it, 101, 102,000. Does it ever break below that 70-ish K price? Because that's where the ETFs were formed. So the argument I mean, simple man's math here. If you break that level, those ETFs start to get a little hairy. Those
Yeah.
BlackRock and they start. So that would be a really bad sign to me. Anything above 70K to me makes it so I would sit in the conversation of like, Austin, do you think it's going to 500K? A million? I don't know. No one knows how, but if we're above 70, I'm still leaning like the big banks don't lose money. BlackRock,
Yeah.
Vanguard, Van Eyck, they don't do this for nothing, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These guys
Yeah.
run the world. So that's a big
Yeah.
key level to me. Do you have any other key price levels you can give the listeners just because They always like that.
Well, 100K is really key.
Yeah.
And again, I think that we were able to break that 100K. That was a big milestone for Bitcoin. That was a major, major kind of thing. I would say you probably want to see Bitcoin maintain 100K for 2025. Like you want to see it get above there and stay above there. I think that, my target for fun, and again, targets don't mean a whole lot to me because I trail a stop, but that's how I manage positions. But for fun, my target, quote unquote, with Bitcoin is 125K by end of year, which I think is pretty modest. Like if you're really
I
a Super
agree.
Bowl on Bitcoin, you're thinking like 200K, 150K. You're following the MicroStrategy story, which makes me super nervous. By the way, it's like this buy it in, and then when it goes up, buy more and more. It's a very interesting
It's
approach.
unbelievable. I
Yeah,
mean, it's going to look really bad if something bad happens, where this guy's on stage like,
it
I'm
sounds
borrowing
like a it
cash.
sounds like a bubble pop
It
story,
sounds
doesn't
like
it?
a bubble.
Yeah,
All over it, all over
yeah,
it. And I think it's, he's on podcasts. Michael Saylor's on podcast and on the internet. And he's like, look, you want Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. But if you want Bitcoin with lighter fluid on it, with gasoline on it, you buy MicroStrategy. And
hmm
now I'm pretty sure I saw this. There are levered ETFs that only hold MicroStrategy. So it's a
yes,
levered micro, which is like a 6, 7, 8x, whatever multiple of Bitcoin volatility,
yep,
which that to me is like binary options level speculation at
yeah,
that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
You know what I'm
Well,
saying? Like
here's the
that's
thing.
unbelievable.
So those leverage ETFs. Here's a funny story about levered
Okay, tell
ETFs
me.
that I would just from our perspective as content creators, for the audience listening, we have a unique kind of role where we see like kind of above the clouds, like what people are saying on our videos, but also sending us direct messages, emails. Austin's DMs are probably full of people who have like testimonies of what's going on in their world. We have a unique lens as content creators in the trading space. Well, I recently had a conversation. I'm of course not going to release this person's name, but they lost 40 grand in Nvidia levered long positions in an
Damn.
environment in which Nvidia has been going straight up. So if they're losing 40K in a leveraged ETF on the way up, and I'm seeing people talk about leveraged ETFs all over the place. I'm seeing people just, buying the hottest names. Again, it can go on for a suspended period of time. I still think that it does go on for a while longer, but it's just you just have to be really careful when you start hearing those stories from our perspective. It
It's
it
bad.
makes me pretty nervous. I'm like, man, when it turns, it's going to be ugly. Same thing with
Agreed.
MicroStrategy, Bitcoin, Nvidia. These things that are not necessarily bad, people take them and they make them terrible, right? People take an Nvidia, which is an incredible, company, and they start buying way out of the money calls, and they start, leveraged ETFs and all these things. So, um, I would say that right now, the outlook on the markets is very positive, and getting close to a very euphoric state. I didn't think that we're necessarily there yet. If you start getting to Bitcoin 150K, Bitcoin 200K, that's in my view a good indicator of like, I'm going to get more defensive at those levels. But for now, the trend kind of plays on.
I think you need that retail hype too to kind of cause the
Yeah.
thing if there's going to be a hard pullback, like in 2017, it was ridiculous. Everybody was talking about Bitcoin, and that's when it was done. And then the bubble
Yeah.
popped, and then it comes down, and then the cycle resets itself. Haven't had that. It feels like this time. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
and
It's
maybe
it's different.
altcoin season. When I you always see people say like altcoin season, when altcoin season is full blown, that's a great timing indicator in recent history examples. Like
100%.
2021 was altcoin season and SPAC season and everything.
I mean, even a little bit of this year, end of
Yeah.
2024, people are like altcoins are kind of back. Some people have been thinking that, but then that makes me wonder: are we at a coincidence of an end of an altcoin cycle as the same time as Bitcoin's around a key psychological price of 100,000? That would be a great time to end the cycle and pull back to 70 or 80K and pop some of the altcoins. I have a
Mhm.
couple of friends, bro, that are heavy into altcoins, and my brother made a bunch of money on Santa Coin,
Oh my
and then I have
goodness.
friends that are in finance that work for banks like Fidelity and Raymond James. They're all at my house on Saturday because it was my birthday. So my wife invited everybody over. You should have seen it, bro. Because I got Crypto Bros, my brother who's on the meme coin, but my brother also works for a private equity firm now. So my brother's like kind of doing both. Then you got the finance guys that are like, dude, I studied all these tests and did all this shit, and you're just making all this money on fart coin and Santa coin. So like the collision of like finance bros was crazy at my house on
Yeah.
Saturday. But it's
Well,
very interesting because you hear the different takes. Like who thinks we're at the top of a bubble?
Mhm.
Not the altcoin boys. The altcoin boys think we're just getting started. My
Yeah.
brother in private equity goes, bro, it's crazy out here. Like you have no idea. But my brother says the same thing you do. It's crazy, but it's not done. So I think that's an interesting take.
Yeah, and it's important to kind of recognize too, like a lot of times if you missed rallies, you just by coincidence seem to think the rally's over. And that's kind of
100%.
how that goes, right? Is people who are more pessimistic on the market, they think it's always going to crash, and people who are optimistic on the market always think it's gonna go up forever. And somewhere in between is probably the truth to all that stuff. Is the market can stay euphoric for a long time. They typically go up over time. So when the trend is good, it's a hard thing to call the top on. However, just being aware and not maybe the biggest thing is like for me, maybe my positioning on this, the best way I could say it is I remain long, but not levered, not at all. No leverage, no borrowing money, no margin, just simply staying with the trends that are working, managing my risk, trailing my stop losses, and if we continue to get more frothy, more euphoric, price to earnings on the S&P continues to go up, I'm just going to slowly build cash, but I'm not going to bet against something that's killing it. I'm going to, just deploy less and less into the market and more into cash, and then wait for dips. I mean, we've also gone, in 2024, it was an awesome year. We did not see one 10% or greater down retracement on the S&P 500. So as you mentioned earlier, if you bought 1% dips last year, you did exceptional. But that is such an outlier year. So to build your whole like worldview of markets based on 2024, you would be setting yourself up for some danger
Well,
when you get a normal year where there's a 10% pullback, 15% pullback. It's
and we
going to
finish
happen.
up the year 7%, not 27%,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And that's why, like, think about it from our perspective too. When you've been in the game for a little while, you realize how much better it is to learn how to trade in a bear market than a bull market. Like, it
Hmm.
builds you for so much more resiliency than if
Oh
you
yeah.
just come into a bull market. How many people do we know that got into trading during COVID and are not
Yeah.
trading anymore, right? Like, they made some money in a bull market, they lost it and some, and then never came back.
That's exactly right. Yeah, no, it's so true. And there's this whole small side note, side of story that you might be paying attention to as well. Is I think it's interesting how people our age or maybe a little younger than us even are like super into like sports betting and
Oh
gambling is
my
so
God.
big, and
Oh, you
that
don't
makes
want to
me a
know,
little
buddy.
like gambling is all the rave all over the place. Everything is gambling nowadays. Crypto, people abuse that, turned into
Everything is
gambling.
speculation.
Yeah,
Let me
everything's
get
so
my
high risk.
overnight hit. Yeah. Oh, bro, you're talking to somebody that sports bets almost daily. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I dabble. It's fun. I don't put very much
Oh,
money on it because I don't know anything. But
bro, I'm
maybe the
ridiculous.
fallacy is people think they know everything.
100% that's the
Yeah.
fallacy. The craziest thing about the sports betting that I heard is that suicides are way up because you can blow all your money and then be sitting at dinner with your wife and she has no idea. Versus if you
Mm,
look at suicides for people that are addicted to drugs, it's actually higher for people that are addicted to sports gambling, people that are addicted to
mm,
gambling. Because you see
wow.
your buddy doing drugs and you could stop him. He looks like a crackhead. You get him into rehab. You can literally gamble all your money away online nowadays, and
Yeah.
it's wild. How many
It's
times, dude? I see this guy yesterday on TikTok or Instagram, whatever. He sold his car, videotapes himself selling the car for 15 grand. That's it. Takes the cash, puts it on Planko balls, where it's like you click and the balls fall down, and if it lands in the
mm,
bucket, you win.
yep, yep. I've
Online
seen those.
stake gam. And he hit. He flipped it to like 30 grand, bro. And that's the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah, right.
Isn't it crazy? And it goes,
Yeah,
and then
no.
it gets, and he calls his mom and he's freaking out. So, yes, gambling in general, sports betting, all that stuff, online gambling, huge, bro. Super popular. And it goes right in line with a lot of our audience is gamblers and traders. Like they are very similar in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
it is crazy. But you know what? I think hopefully guys like you and me, we will triumph because like look, I never tell people don't do things, do whatever you want, but be smart. Allocate a certain amount of money to your long-term portfolio so you don't have to work forever. Allocate a certain amount of money to have fun. Some people have hobbies. They
Yeah.
like to golf. If you don't like to golf, you do sports bets, whatever, right? You're
Yeah.
still spending money. It's
Yeah.
all about moderation. Just like eating milkshakes. You can have a milkshake once in a while. You look good. I look good, right? But if you eat 10 milkshakes a week, what's going to happen? So I think that's the key with all this, right? It's like
Yeah.
finding that moderation for yourself.
That's so true. And I think that with the whole accessibility to gambling in today's society, you have to know where the line is. If I gamble, like if I'm gambling sports betting, if I'm playing blackjack, I know I don't have the edge. I know that if I keep playing, I will lose money. But when it comes to trading in markets, it is a beatable game. It's not the
Hmm.
casino versus the stock market, the forex market. There is derivable edge out there. You can trade for positive yield, like if you're playing
Absolutely.
the carry trade in the forex market. If you're holding dividend stocks, you get paid to hold dividend stocks. Like there are ways to generate returns that are not exciting, but they work
Oh
over
no, it's
over
way
time.
it's so different. The capital markets are
Yeah.
built to make you money. They are built for us to find, like, the longer that we stay in them, the more money we make. Way
Mhm.
different than a casino taking our money. I agree.
Yeah.
Way
Yeah.
different.
No, it's
What's
and,
new?
and
No, go ahead.
understanding that is just really important. Like just
Agreed.
understanding the difference. Like this environment I can make money in if I'm conservative, but it doesn't matter how conservative you are of a casino. If you don't know how to count cards, play blackjack perfectly, then you can't win money.
You're screwed. You're screwed.
Yeah, long
What's
term.
what's good with Frank? How's the team? How's the office? So are you working from home more now? What are you doing?
Things are good. We do one day from home and then 4 days in. We've got,
Nice.
still a good sized team. We're doing our live streams and throughout the week. So we
Yep.
we stay real busy on the content side like yourself. And it's been good. We launched a new tool at the end of 2024 that's more stock market centric. So we've got
Okay.
the Edge Finder, which is our main software tool that helps traders to look at macro data, economic stuff. I've shown you that tool a couple times. But then we
Yep.
just recently launched the Stock Box, which is a tool more focused on company financials. And if you want to, I was looking at Nike stock and like its valuation and just stuff like that. Tools for stock traders is something that we've been working on. We just launched that new tool. So staying busy, but we're
Dude,
having
that's
fun with
awesome.
it. Yeah.
I always admire you for the software side of your business, bro. I think it's genius because, like, every trader can use it. It is not something that is exclusive to one person or not. And it makes everybody smarter because that information is hard to find on your own. The Edge Finder tool is super helpful. We have guys in our group that are signed up with your thing that talk about the carry trade often. That comes up very often.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
your
it's
Edge
it's
Finder
just
makes it easy to see
it's just giving people the tools that they want and
in a presentable way. Your
yeah,
user
yeah.
interface is good, like it's presentable, it's good. So what's with the stock box? What inspired that? You just wanted to streamline your analysis of all these stocks because there's a gajillion stocks to look at.
Yeah, just naturally, the Edge Finder was a passion project for us. We wanted to build something for ourselves that we could use to analyze markets better, to look at, economic reports and things like that. Well, then naturally over time, we had, the very popular tool, and people were asking, well, what about stocks? And we said, well, stocks don't fit the same mold as economies do, right? Stocks are more micro, currencies and indices and commodities are more macro. So we had to build a new tool that was specific to the micro level stuff. So a company's financials and, just so a whole new spectrum of having way more stock tickers than currency pairs and commodities and indices. That's a small number of things. So stocks was a whole new problem, but the project. But we've had a lot of fun with it. The whole thing's a passion project. It's just super fun to build stuff like that and to share it with the world. And I was scrolling through Twitter the other day and I saw somebody I didn't follow, didn't know, and they were posting up a picture of the Edge Finder. I was like, this is awesome.
That's awesome. What about any events coming up, any speeches, any seminars? What do you got going on 2025? Anything good?
No, nothing on the books in terms of in-person stuff. Been doing the digital stuff, and right above you, you were in that book. I was in that book as well. The prop trading secrets. Yep. So who knows? I mean, we didn't write that book, but that book. Shout out to our friends Etienne and Kathy. Guys, go check out the prop trading secrets. Austin and I are both featured in there. So there's your plug for the book.
Yeah, let's be real, everybody. Nick's got the better chapter title than me. I'm gonna leave it at that. You got to grab the book to read the chapter title. I think Nick has one of the best ones in the entire book. So you
They're
guys go
they're
grab the
both
book.
good. They're both good. Highly
Oh,
recommend it.
thanks.
Check out the book,
Yeah.
and the whole book is great. So definitely check it out. There's plenty to learn there.
The in-person stuff is tricky. We're doing one in 2 weeks in Dallas. It was
Oh, cool.
inspired because we had and I was a guest speaker at an event in LA, and the people there, a couple of my guys came and they were like, "Yo, we want to do one." So we're doing a 2 day like live trading boot camp, kind of like just trading together, doing the whole thing for a few days. But if I didn't have sponsors, I'd actually lose money on it because we are doing it at a really nice hotel and I'm buying everybody lunch and I bought everybody tickets to go to this concert afterwards and it's going to be fun and shit and just
Oh,
I
awesome.
like to make it a whole event. So it's not a moneymaker, but it is so good to get people together. Now you have that
Yeah.
office. So it's like in my head, I'm like, next time you want to do something, bro, you got to talk to me and let me get some people and we'll come up to the office and we'll do a thing.
Yeah, that's true.
That's easy, you know.
Yeah, like a
But the work from home
2,400
life is nice.
space. So
Yeah,
it
that's
could
good.
work. Yeah,
That's good.
yeah, it could work. Yeah, no, that would be awesome. Maybe we'll figure something out. I would love to do some in-person events. They're a lot of fun. Like you said, they're a little financially they don't make the most sense, but they're great for content. They're a lot of fun. It's a cool, life experience as
Once you
it's
fly the
trading
video
space.
guy, you buy everybody's Ubers, you buy everybody's you're not making money. Not
Yeah,
maybe a
no,
couple
no.
$1,000, but
Yeah.
he yeah, the seminars are good, like you said, really for the networking and the connections and stuff. But it's good. So 2025, you said your trade of the year was going to be, I forget what you said at Trader Fest. Do you remember? It was risk on? It was Bitcoin, I think was your pick, right?
There's Bitcoin. Yep.
Yeah. So
What
you're
was
thinking
yours?
100. I
Did
was
you
oil.
have
I
one?
said oil down. Yeah.
You said
Remember? I
oil
think
down. Okay.
oil down.
Yep.
Trump, if he's right and he drills. And now in line with that, Trudeau just resigned this morning.
I saw that. I saw that.
So we'll see everybody starting to bow the knee to Trump or come kiss the ring, whatever you want to say. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks until we get to the election or the inauguration. And then after, how quickly can these changes, how quickly does Doge come in? How quickly, does all this stuff start to take shape? Hopefully quickly. And I think that would be super optimistic for us. Cause like you said, I'm always risk on. I'm always leaning long. I'm never a short. It's tough to make money, I think, in a portfolio as a short. It's just very
Yeah,
difficult.
certainly in a bull market, and then recognizing when that changes is maybe the
That's it.
the challenging part, but something we'll have to keep an eye on. I mean, my base case for 2025 is a continued move in the positive direction for both gold stocks and Bitcoin. However, I don't see the magnitude being as far, and I see just watching for larger scale reversals and what could come along. I think that the whole like tariff fear thing is a little overblown.
I
Um,
agree.
we'll see if something serious comes.
Do you know
The market,
before, I think it was before World War One, someone's going to fact check me and I'm going to be wrong on the date, but before some major event in like, let's call it like maybe the 30s or the 40s, within the last 100 years, the US made all of its money through tariffs. Maybe it was after World War II, I'm thinking about when the Industrial Revolution popped off and we started selling everything back to Europe. But that's how we made our money was
Mhm.
tariffs, not taxing our own people. You know what I'm saying? We left
Yeah,
Britain for the taxes, bro. So now to
yeah.
tax us to death is kind of stupid. So I'm for the tariffs thing. I think we can make deals. I think we can make it work.
Yeah, I mean the US marketplace is definitely the most sought after consumer in the whole world. We spend a lot of money, so it's a treasure to have access to it for free is a little interesting. But yeah, no, I mean throughout history, U.S. tariffs weren't like the killer of the U.S. economy by any means.
No,
So
never
we'll see. It'll be an interesting year, but I kind of agree with you on the oil thing. I think we could see lower
lower
prices in
oil.
oil.
Yeah.
Unless
73 right
unless we
now
get
on
some
US spot.
geopolitical
Right,
thing, but
right. War or
right
whatever.
now it doesn't seem to be the case. So we'll
Because if he
see.
drills, if he can stop the war of Russia and Ukraine, I had Sam Cavanaugh on the podcast. Listen to this. He said his trade of the year for 2025 is long the ruble. He thinks the war will end with Trump ending the war and Russia's stock market comes back, Russian currency comes back. He's like, no one's going to like
Interesting.
me saying that because it's Russia and everybody's supposed to hate Russia. He's like, but if you look at it, like that could be a great trade of 2025. So I think that could be
Interesting.
interesting. Do you think that the unemployment numbers are going to go up if they fire a bunch of government employees? What do you think? How does that work? Because you know jobs numbers really well. How does that work? 40,000, 50,000 government employees that don't even go to the office more than one day a month or whatever it is, they get
Mhm.
fired. What does that look like for the economy? Does it really hurt us that bad? I don't know.
Well, in terms of jobs numbers, 40, 50,000 probably wouldn't be too significant.
That's what I'm saying.
However, the other thing too is that unemployment rate in general in the United States is still really low. Like unemployment
Really
rate,
low.
like long-term average is about 5.7%. We're at like 4.3 or 4.2, one of
Yeah,
those.
if that.
So, we're still we've got plenty of room for it to still be in the healthy range of unemployment level that would fit in with history. Not, now, obviously, you don't want that number to go up, but it wouldn't be the worst thing if it meant, inflation comes down and the
Right.
net
Government
positive
spending can be
outweighs.
better, right? We can
Yeah.
rebalance government budget because, like you talked about at the beginning, the debt is an issue. Whether we address
Yeah.
it today or my kid and your kid address it in 15, 20 years, someone's going to need to address it. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think the answer's been actually said. My thoughts on the debt thing. There's a way to resolve it without losing US reserve currency. You know what I'm saying? I think the US can still have the dollar as the world reserve currency. That'll be what people wanted. And we can solve this debt problem. You just need
Yeah.
the right person to solve it. The people that are in the positions right now aren't the right people.
Yeah, I tend to agree in terms of the national debt needing to be resolved sooner rather than later. Powell's even said that. So, one of the things I hope that does not happen in 2025, I actually think Powell's done a decent job. And some people agree with
Me
that. Some
too.
people disagree with that. I think he's done decently well. And I think that there was this fear that, oh, Trump's going to kick him out immediately. And I don't think there actually since then has been interviews on both sides, Powell and Trump, where they want to work together. And
Yeah.
we'll see if that does play out. But Trump did initially put him
That's what I was
into,
just going to say. Trump gave him the job. Trump
yeah.
wanted Gary Gensler out. Gary already resigned. Trump
Hmm.
wants Trudeau gone. Trudeau's gone. So
Yeah.
everybody Trump wants out, Trump's going to get out. The director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, I think he's gone or whoever. Like so, these people
Mhm.
that know Trump was going to fire them, they're stepping out of the way. So I'm going to guess that, like you said, they spoke behind the scenes or their people spoke, but and they're like, look, we're cool. We're
Same
gonna work
same
together.
team.
Same
Yeah.
team here. Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
at some point, I think that's what people are afraid of, right? Oh, dude, today the headline was it was like gays and trannies are arming themselves because they think Trump is going to put them in concentration camps. I'm like, you people just in that perspective live over there. The rest of us, we're going to try to make alliances and make America better. Trump and Powell need to sit down and say, can we come to an agreement? Cool. You know what I'm saying? Like these people need to come together. It can't just be like divisive, divisive. That doesn't solve anything.
Yeah. I think for the most part, the U.S. economy is in a really overall pretty good place,
I agree.
which sets us up for some hopefully good years ahead if that continues. And I think a large part of it is U.S. centric, but it's also global centric.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in Russia does that actually, because Putin has to play ball too, and other places have to be on the same page. The Chinese government, all that stuff. But we'll have to see. I think that the best way I would put it is that a lot of the fears are probably overstated, and
Mm.
there may be some opportunities there. That's why I mentioned earlier. I like healthcare. I think it's people are terrified of what the healthcare sector could see due to the Trump administration, and
RFK.
those are cash machine businesses that I actually really like, and they've been sold off massively. So there's some in my opinion some opportunity there, and I could be right, I could be wrong, but I'll allocate some positioning there. And if it works well, then great. If it doesn't, then we stay diversified for the most part.
So everybody listening, if there's another pandemic, Nick's going to get rich while the rest of us are wearing masks, hiding in the basement again.
Who knows? Let's hope there's not another pandemic. That
No,
I
let's
would
hope
like
not.
to not go back that way.
Last question. Where are you traveling to this year? I know you had some big trips last year. Where are you going this year?
Yeah, last year was huge. My
You were all
sister got
over, bro.
yeah, my sister got married in Greece, and then my sister-in-law got married in Ireland. So we did a massive amount of traveling last year. This year we don't have as much. We're actually going to Fort Lauderdale for a bachelorette party.
Nice.
We may do some drive trips. I also want to just go visit the Midwest, but I don't know if it's going to happen this year. With the new house, we've been just busy with projects and spending money left, right, and center, as I'm sure you're aware, because you also recently moved into a new
It
place.
takes like a year. Like you
Yeah.
said, I'll be at a year in April, so 4 more months. Now we've just gotten back to the bug of like, okay, the house is set up enough. Let's go do something fun now. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Greece, sick. Glad you got that done.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Ireland, I saw the pictures for that. I mean, a little gray for me, but still beautiful castles and shit. So cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are two good bucket list trips you checked off there. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you ever drive down to Florida, buddy, I know Fort Lauderdale's not my side, but I'm in Tampa. Come hang out
Yeah.
anytime.
Yeah.
And
I've got other
also,
friends in Tampa as well, so maybe I'll make a trip at some point.
come on, come on. And I was speaking to Anthony Crudelli yesterday. I know you're not a big golfer, at least from what I see on social, but there is potentially a golf event happening down in Naples that he's going to put together. I'm going to help him promote it. So that could be cooking up
Oh, that's fun.
for October. So that'll be fun
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Very cool.
So,
Very
well,
cool.
listen, bro, I appreciate you so much. I know the audience does. I'm going to put links to all your socials in the description. We'll put the Edge Finder links down below. If they go to the Edge Finder links, can they find the new stock box?
Yes, it's on our website, a1trading.com/edgefinder or /stockbox. So both are on the site.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Glad to start 2025 with you. Wouldn't have it any other way. Listeners, appreciate you guys always staying through. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you connect with Nick down below. And we will see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks, Austin.